Dennis Mckenna, welcome back to the Sea Realm podcast.
Pleasure to be here. Always a pleasure.
Well, we haven't spoken the podcast since 2007, and I haven't spoken to you as far as I can remember since 2008. So how have you been recently?
Well, I've been good. I've been busy, which is probably good. Many things are going on. I've been working at my job at the university teaching ethnopharmacology and actually working on some projects down in Peru involving the herbarium down there. I was able to facilitate some funding for Botanical Dimensions, which, as you know, is a nonprofit that my brother and his wife started 20 years ago now. Still an active organization in ethnobotany, and we got a grant from a corporation. I was able to facilitate getting a 3-year grant to begin to create a virtual online version of the herbarium at the Universidad Nacional Amazonia Peruana, which is a great little resource for biodiversity researchers, ethnopharmacologists, or anyone else that's interested in the Amazonian botanical species. Can be useful from many perspectives. So last summer we initiated that project. We've been doing some teaching down there as well with some group of pharmacy students from the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And like that, keeping busy. And then as if we didn't have enough to do, I've started this book project, or this Kickstarter project, to try to get enough funds to, take a kind of sabbatical for maybe 6 to 8 months and write this book, which would be a kind of memoir of my brothers and my shared experience over 60 years. And so thank you for letting me let folks know about that. I guess we can get over we can get through the shameless self-promotion part if I just come out and say it right now, which is, you can look at my Facebook page. I've had to totally get into Facebook, which has been a new experience for me. The product is on Kickstarter.com, and it's called The Brotherhood of the Screaming Abyss, which we can discuss why that might be. But that's the tentative title of the book. So if you go on Kickstarter.com and search on my name or search on that, it'll come up. And similarly, you can link in there from my Facebook page. So that's what I've got going right now, and hopefully this Kickstarter project will reach its threshold, and then I'm going to have to go into seclusion or something, find a cabin off the grid in Peru someplace and write this darn thing. And then get it out. Hopefully hopefully by fall of 2012. That is the kind of self-imposed deadline for getting this thing out.
For obvious reasons, yes.
So that's for obvious reasons, right. For quite obvious reasons. If the world is going to end, I want people to have time to read it, before the world ends. So September 2012 seems about right. And if it's not going to end, it's a great positioning for Christmas presents. So you can buy one for yourself and one for your loved ones and give it away for Christmas, assuming that we will have Christmas. And I'm on the fence on that one. I think we probably will. We're going to have some. So yeah, that's the timing. And, that, in some ways that's a marketing decision, but it's also, the timing is appropriate, and for me personally, the timing is, now is the time. well, I can still remember things. And, I recently turned 60. I turned 60 in December. And that is crossing a threshold that makes you think about your life and, what you've lived so far and what's left of it. Hopefully a lot of it is left, but you never know. So if you've got a story to tell, or something that you want to get out, it just seems like from a personal point of view, now's the time. And so that's why I'm trying to, clear my decks and create the time to actually do a good job and write a thoughtful book. And this is the challenge we all face. I think these days is this sense that there's never enough time for anything, and certainly a personal, sense that things are speeding up in some ways. I don't know that things are speeding up, but I think that in subjective time, we're jamming a lot more activities into the same amount of time. And so the impression is that things are speeding up. We perpetually seem to be behind the eight ball in terms of just staying on top of things. At least I feel that. I don't know if you do. Many people I know do.
Well, Dennis,
what else can I tell you?
Dennis, I sent you some email this morning. Actually, it was a forwarded message from Larry Lowe, who is planning to attend Alan Shoemaker's conference in Iquitos this summer. As far as I know, he has never had ayahuasca, never had psilocybin. He has no prior experience other than Salvia divinorum. And his interest is in UFOs and contact with advanced beings, be they extraterrestrial, extra-dimensional, or, as he likes to say, co-indigenous. Another tenant in the building, as Terrence put it. I wonder, given the amount of ayahuasca sessions that you have under your belt, I'm sure you have got some interesting things to say on the topic of contact with seemingly extraterrestrial minds. And I'll just leave it vague and let you pick up wherever you think is best.
Okay, well, he is going down there, and for the first time going to take ayahuasca because of his interest in non-human intelligences, as it were.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, good luck. No, this is one of the things that, that attracts us about ayahuasca, about psilocybin, these tools, is that they seem to, put us in touch with a realm, a dimension, if you will, where there are these, these other entities that have things they're eager to tell us and to teach us in some sense. And this is really the conundrum in a lot of ways with the psychedelic experience. You can look at that from a reductionist neuroscience point of view, neurophysiological point of view, and you can say, well, clearly this has to be yourself, some part of yourself that has, split off and is presenting itself as something other than the self, another intelligence, but it's got to come from your own consciousness. That's one model. Or you could say, well, maybe consciousness is not necessarily something confined to the brain. Maybe the brain is more like a detector of consciousness. It's like tuning the radio. You change the dial and you tune in different channels, and on all these different channels you find a lot of crosstalk. You find, these conversations going on, or these interactions with other intelligences, entities, and that's just, I do not see any way right now that science can resolve this. It seems to me that in some ways the idea that consciousness is primal and the brain is simply a detector and in a certain sense a transducer of what is out there, if you will, makes a lot more sense. In some ways it explains more about our experience than the sort of, reductionist model that, whatever the brain produces, whatever we experience, it all originates, inside of our heads. I mean, in a certain sense, that's true in that the brain is a great synthesizer of experience. In some ways, it takes the raw data of reality and spins all this together into a whole tapestry that you can comprehend. A lot of chaotic data that's a lot of what the brain does is it parses data, it creates patterns, and it recognizes patterns. What is the ultimate source of that information? I think we really can't say. If you accept the model of indigenous peoples, they will. I mean, for them, it's just obvious. I mean, it doesn't really come up. Of course, there are entities that are not human that, these shamanic plants and these shamanic practices can put you in touch with. That's what they're for. That's what these tools do. And we can just accept that, and we can accept that, and we don't necessarily have to prove it, Science is a tool for generating models. It's a tool for generating hypotheses. We often think that if something stands up to scientific scrutiny, if something is scientifically valid, it's proven. And actually, that's something that people don't really understand, that in science, nothing is ever proven. All you can say is, based on what we know now, the theory, whatever it might be, is not disproven. And so scientists, maybe more than others, people who don't practice science, realize that their models are always provisional. There could be new data that comes along tomorrow that completely overturns the paradigm, or that seriously impacts the paradigm such that the models have to be revised. That's how knowledge progresses, that's how science progresses. So, so science has its particular models to explain these kinds of things. Indigenous peoples have a certain perspective on it too. They are not so concerned with scientific or objective validation, because to them it just seems self-evident. But those are models too, and I don't think that we have enough data from any side to say one is more valid than the other.
There is one.
Kind of wandered.
Oh, that's okay. Let me take it back to this email from Larry, because he quoted a previous episode of the Sea Realm podcast in which our mutual friend Yasmina interviewed Steve Beyer, author of Singing to the Plants.
Oh, yes.
So the quote from Steve Beyer is this: "The extraterrestrial healers come down speaking computer language." And I wonder where you could take that.
Steve Beyer made that quote?
Seemingly. I haven't gone back to re-listen to the interview.
Well, it sounds good. I mean, that doesn't sound like what a traditional, shamanic healer would say necessarily. I think that's great. That sounds good. The extraterrestrial entities or whatever come down speaking computer language. I mean, that's poetic and all that. But I don't think we really know, what's going on. I don't think we know that these entities are extraterrestrial. As Terrence mentioned, maybe they're tenants in the same building. You just don't see them normally. We don't know what language they speak. They seem to be polyglots, polylingual, and they speak. What they speak depends on who they're talking to. I mean, to techno geeks, to people like us, they may well speak computer language. To a shaman, they may speak in a completely different language. They may speak in the language of Icaros, for example. So that is just a medium of communication, and it might be appropriate for depending on the audience. You're going to try to speak in a language that your recipient can understand. you may be trying to convey the same message, but there are different ways to say it. So that's an interesting way to put it. I think, I think that one of the lessons that ayahuasca has taught me, and these other plant psychedelics have taught me, which I very often talk about, is they emphasize how little we know. We can become very hubristic and sort of arrogant, especially in this age of science and rationalism, to thinking we've pretty much got it all figured out. We know a lot. No, actually, we don't know very much at all, or as ayahuasca puts it to me often, not too delicately, you don't know shit. And never forget it, always be, happy that you know what you know within the realm of what you think you know. This is all good. Always beyond that is an infinity of you don't know. And so humility should be encouraged in the sense that, it's not that we should stop trying to understand or stop trying to expand the sphere of our knowledge. We should always just be aware of our limitations. And I think that, science is a two-edged sword. I think that, that science, because it's so powerful sometimes in terms of results, practical results, the way that scientific knowledge can yield technical knowledge. The bomb does blow up, the internet does work. These are all based on scientific principles, and we find that impressive. But that doesn't mean that we totally understand, what's going on. We understand very little. And, I think people that work in science, if they really think about what they do, are always aware that science looks at a very, very small slice of the total picture and doesn't hesitate to, dismiss data that is inconvenient, doesn't hesitate to ignore or explain away inconvenient facts. So their models are always evolving. They're always incomplete. And I think that's true in any shamanic, in any endeavor of human experience, including shamanism. I mean, shamans are essentially scientists, in the sense that they are exploring an empirical realm that seems to be permeated with entities and information and, a certain structure that is apprehendable through these altered states. What is the model that explains it? They don't necessarily put together they don't really think like scientists in the sense that they don't, I think, try to construct testable hypotheses. That's the job of a scientist. They just try to approach it as they take it on its face as a reality that can be experienced, and from which useful information can be derived, like how to heal, like the properties of healing plants, the properties of, healing songs and things that can practically be done in those dimensions that benefit people or harm people for that matter. I mean, shamanism is far from a entirely benevolent thing, as you know. So I think that's an issue, I think that we always have to remember that whatever, verbiage we put on this, it doesn't necessarily describe what's going on, which is good. People are free to jump in and offer their own interpretations because, in fact, none of us knows shit, so all views are welcome and some are more welcome than others. Right? I think that's what it comes down to.
Well, I don't think that I'll use "We Don't Know Shit" as the episode title, but there is a meme that I like to propagate, and it is the meme of epistemological humility. So that might be a good episode title.
Okay. Yeah, that's better. That's better. We don't want to put off your audience, and I'm sorry to use the profanity, but it does it does say it,
It's all good.
I mean, it's all good. Yeah, it's definitely all good. I think that, on the sort of on the cultural, evolutionary, and historical timescales, humanity has had this long relationship with these teacher plants, these teacher entities.